Hey, what's going on out there? I'm Sean Devine. Hope you all are doing well. In this tutorial, we are going to be breaking down the 5 Waves mixing and mastering plugins that you should buy first. If you're in the market for third-party plugins, let's say you've been using the stock plugins in your DAW, getting comfortable with, just the general sort of concepts of mixing and mastering. Now you want to take it to the next level. These are going to be superior in a lot of ways. Waves plugins were the first mixing and mastering plugins that I bought. I still use those to this day, as well as all the plugins that we're going to look at here in this video. I'm going to show you some tutorials that are on my channel. It's just going to give you some different context for how I'm using each of these plugins and how I am sure that you're going to use them in your own sessions as well. First up, you got to have a good dynamic EQ. You're going to use this in mixing as well as mastering, and most DAWs don't have a stock option. The kick's got a lot of info at 40 Hertz, so I'm going to slide that one to 40, and then we're going to put this one more towards about 80. So what we're going to be doing is creating a reduction when the kick comes through on the bass line for just the low frequency, and then we're going to be retaining all those high mids. Another plugin you absolutely will need is pitch correction. Some of you are going to use it less often than others, but if you're doing modern mixing, you're going to be using some kind of pitch correction at some point. It's very, very important to find one that is reliable and is not going to give you a lot of issues in your DAW. The only one that I have stuck with, the one that has proven itself over time, is Waves Tune Real Time. And obviously you can use it with no latency. So if you're tracking with artists, it's going to be an indispensable tool there as well. My flow is off the wall. Yeah. I think that's it. So now let's just, God, I cannot talk into these things. Trying to talk into pitch correction is crazy, but let's just do a little freestyle now that we've set that scale up. My flow is off the wall. Let's see what we gon' do, man. Your flow, y'all trip off some triplets, and I get this. We on YouTube, and this is not written. I swear I'm just going off the top, but I come from my heart, and we do it from the start. Every day I'm in here working hard, trying to bring some value to your home. Teach you something that you might not have known. I'm sitting here drinking Dunkin' Donuts coffee, man. They running off the wall. All right, so real quick, let's just try now to harmonize with the hook vocal that I've already got. Again, this makes it very easy to start figuring out something in our user scale that's going to work with the hooks. So let me just go up here. My flow is my flow is off the wall. Yeah. You hear me when I call. Yeah. They follow, we lead them all. Forget my lyrics. Yeah. Don't doubt when I said that I ball. Yeah. Foot in the door and I'm fitting to get it now. Foot in the door, yeah. My foot in the door and I found that harmony. Yeah. Don't doubt when I said that I ball. Yeah. Foot in the door and I'm fitting to get it now. Maybe one of the very first third-party plugins that you're likely going to want to purchase is a maximizer or a limiter. If you're like me and you use Logic Pro, the adaptive limiter is not going to cut it for commercial masters and loud mixes that compete. It starts to fall apart really, really quickly. It's very much a utility sort of limiter, not something that I would recommend using on the master bus. It can do the job, but these are going to do a lot better job. With the multi-band limiter, we can set different bands here, and then we can set priorities across these bands so that the maximizer knows, okay, work hard on this. Don't, try to kind of rein in on this as much. So I'll show you how this works. Let's just set our crossover points up here. Let's do something like maybe 120 for the low, going down into our subwoofer. Then we'll maybe do something like 750, and then let's do 2000 and 4000. I think that'll give us some different bands to work with. But I'm going to go down to the low end. I'm going to set the value higher, which means it's going to be lower priority in terms of where this threshold is going to hit. So let's play that back and I'll show you what that does. Don't get it twisted, I'm not conflicted, I'm just out living my truth. I ain't perfect, some days feel worthless, prayers stay up high for the youth. When I pull that threshold up, you could see that the maximizer or the limiter, it's not even attenuating right there because I set that higher, and it's going to work on attenuating some of these other bands. So let's adjust those accordingly as well. Don't get it twisted, I'm not conflicted, I'm just out living my truth. I ain't perfect, some days feel worthless, prayers stay up high for the youth. And I can never judge you, grudge with you, while you're on your own walk. So now that we've set that up, you can see that we're going to get the most attenuation here in this low mid band, removing some of the mud, and then also, this 2K to 4K band, we're going to get some removal of some of that harshness. Now, not only can we push the rest of our maximization harder across our mix, but we can also now bring up the gain in, say, this band here, this 1K, 2K area that we've been focused on. So let's go down there and we'll boost that gain up, maybe a dB. And then let's say that we're going to boost the gain up on this low mid just because we are going to get some more attenuation. So we'll do that. And then the high end, maybe like a half dB here. And we'll pull the threshold down a little bit lower. I'm sorry if I showed up faded. I guess it's better now than being faded. Happy all the times we wait. I'm sorry if I showed up faded. I guess it's better now than being faded. Happy all the times we wasted. Substance out of nothing we... Next up, you are going to want an analog modeled EQ. So if you've been using the stock EQ in your DAW, you've noticed that when you boost things, it gets really harsh very quickly. It just doesn't sound as good as a hardware EQ or some of the third-party plugins that you've probably heard. And the reason is because these analog model EQs include other aspects of the analog hardware, like saturation. There's also some very unique curves that are created in terms of how you're boosting, how you're cutting, and they have a much more musical result. One of my favorite EQs, one I use often in Studio Rack, is the Manny Marroquin EQ. Just has a certain musicality and tone to it that you can't get anywhere else, especially in the top end. But let's go ahead and first we're going to get rid of some of the chunk out of this vocal. It's a little bit fat, a little bit thick, and we need to get rid of some of the excess thickness anyway. How many ways to live? How many ways to give? Would you abort when you come up short? Will you hold on tight, driving down this road, swerving through disappointments? But the highs come with it. Peace of mind, gotta go get it where you find it. Quietly reminded, it's not where your mind is. Looking up above when we need the... I'm gonna leave the high pass at about 105. I see a lot of folks out there starting to EQ things much higher than this, like 170, 180, 200, 250 sometimes. And, stylistically, that might be the right thing, but just realize that you're not always going to do that. There is no such thing as always or never in mixing, like we've said before. But, sometimes you don't want to put it up so high. You want a little bit thicker character in your vocal. Now, I do want to add a little bit at 800. I just find that this notch here on the Manny Marroquin EQ is really nice for vocals to get things to sit correctly here. So I'm just going to add a little bit of 800, maybe a dB, something like that. How many ways to live? How many ways to give? Would you abort when you come up short? Will you hold on tight, driving down this road, swerving through disappointments? But the highs come with it. Peace of mind, gotta go get it where you find it. Quietly reminded, it's not where your mind is. Next up, I'm going to take out a little bit of this 1.6K notch. Now, a lot of you see, 1K, 2K is that frequency that has a lot of the presence, a lot of the impact of your vocal in a mix. However, it can start to build up. This mic has a very forward midsection, and so I can just find that it can be a little bit much. It can also sound a little bit nasally depending on the performer. So I'm going to take some of that out. Up above when we need the love is a subtle wink or the tap or touch on the shoulder, climbing over boulders, pass it all around as the world grows colder. Know that I got you. If you need something, I find you. Stars connect in the sky, realign you. Gave up my old ways, high hopes, no fear, new days. A little smoother sound there. And finally, the magic high-end boost here on this EQ. We're going to go to 12.5K. I like this notch for my vocals in particular. And we're going to add, maybe 2, 3, 4 dB if we're feeling adventurous. Let's see. How many ways to live? How many ways to give? Would you abort when you come up short? Will you hold on tight, driving down this road, swerving through disappointments? But the highs come with it. Peace of mind, gotta go get it where you find it. Quietly reminded, it's not where your mind is. Looking up above when we need the love is a subtle wink or the tap or touch on the shoulder, climbing over boulders. Last but certainly not least, you are absolutely going to need a great De-Esser. Now, a lot of DAWs have De-Essers included. They will get the job done, but they're certainly not as capable as the ones that we're about to listen to. If you're using a modern mic, especially in rap vocals, today, something like this, the 103, these mics are boosted in the top end quite heavily. So you are absolutely essentially going to need a de-esser to prevent harshness and to tame that sibilance. Next up, let's go to the DPR 402, which this one I had not really been familiar with. Waves had a sale a couple weeks ago, and so I just picked this up. Thought it was interesting because it combines a compressor, a peak limiter, and a de-esser. It's kind of a different combo of effects there, but it works surprisingly well for, taming a vocal and keeping the S's in check. It's got a great de-esser section. I did everything not to get too close, cause when it goes sour, I'll be feeling it the most. I got a list of things to do before I leave now. I got a lot of hands to hold before I bleed out. So tell me this one thing, can we live for one thing other than ourselves? All the hate could go to hell. So just a few dB, let's A-B that. I got a lot of hands to hold before I bleed out. So tell me this one thing, can we live for one thing other than ourselves? And with. I got a lot of hands to hold before I bleed out. So tell me this one thing, can we live for one thing other than ourselves? Nice, smooth, sibilant control there. It also has a peak limiter, so sometimes with vocals, if you're pushing it, especially with a 2-track, it's nice to just dial that in. All right, y'all, so those are the 5 Waves mixing and mastering plugins that I would recommend buying first if you're in the market for third-party plugins. I've been curious and I've ventured out and I've bought a lot of different plugins, a lot of different brands. These are the ones that I always just seem to come back to. I'm confident knowing I'm gonna get the best results with these Waves plugins. They're stable and they just have proven to be timeless for me. So maybe you have some plugins that you started off with that have been that way. We'd love to hear about those in the comments. If you learn anything in the video, please like, subscribe, and consider sharing. Hit that notification bell for more. We'll talk to you soon.